Hello everyone, welcome. Today I would like to go over some sewing equipment along with their uses and some preventable measures we can take while using these sewing equipments that we're going to talk about. The first tool that I would like to talk about is a seam ripper. A seam ripper is a tool that we use for removing or picking out stitches while protecting our fabric. For example, if I were sewing or quilting a blanket together and I realized that I didn't like the design that was sewn onto my quilt or blanket, I would be able to take my seam ripper and I would place it underneath the stitch, and I can either push it to cut out the stitches or I can pluck out the stitches that I do not want anymore. When using the the seam ripper, it's important to know and to remember that the curved blade is sharp. When we're not using our seam ripper, we want to make sure that we keep our protective cover on it when we're not using it. We want to make sure that we never point this at our body or at someone else. And when we're working with this, we want to make sure that the point is always working away from us, along with making sure that there's no other sharp equipment around us that we can possibly poke ourselves with. The next thing that I would like to talk about is the pin cushion. A pin cushion is a small cushion that we use in sewing to store our pins and needles with their heads protruding out so we can take hold of them easily. This is a great place where we can collect our pins and needles without losing them. When using a pin cushion, like said, I would take the pointy end, I would push it in, leaving the head of the needle pointing out so I can easily pull it out when using it. When we're using a pin cushion, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to when we're putting our pins in. So as you can see, the pin that I have here is longer than my pin cushion. If I was not paying attention, it is possible that when putting in the pin, I would go through and I could possibly poke my finger or hurt myself. Up next, we have our thread. Thread is a kind of yarn that we use for sewing. It comes in different colors, materials, and weights. Right here I have an all-purpose thread. You can use this for a variety of projects. I just chose to use green today because it's my favorite color. When we're using thread, we want to make sure that all the scrap pieces that we have that fall on the floor, we want to make sure that we sweep them up quickly because it is possible to slip on them as they do become slippery if they pile up on the floor. Up next we have our scissors. Scissors are an instrument that we use for cutting cloth, paper, and other thin material. It consists of two blades laid on top of each other with a fastener in the middle so we are able to open and close them. And at the base, we have two holes, one for your thumb and for a finger. When we're using scissors, we want to make sure that when we're carrying them, we have them facing down, away from your face. We want to keep them closed when using, not open, and we want to pay attention while we're using them. One other thing is we want to make sure that if you drop them, you do not want to try to catch it. You're better off letting the scissor fall to the floor and picking it up off of the floor rather than catching it. Up next we have our needle. A needle is used in sewing to pull thread through cloth or fabric. When we use a needle, you want to make sure that if you drop it, you pick it up immediately and you don't wait to pick it up. When not using a needle, you want to make sure that you don't hold them in your mouth or in your pockets. Instead, you can use that pin cushion and store your needle inside. Next, we have our thimble. A thimble is a metal or plastic cap with a closed end. It's worn to protect our finger and push the needles while sewing. So to use a thimble while sewing, I would have my needle. I would insert it into my fabric. And then if it was having a hard time pushing through, I would take my thimble, place it on that needle, and I would easily be able to push the needle through the fabric and pull it out through the other side. When not using the thimble, we want to make sure that we do not hold this in our mouth. It can be easily swallowed and you can choke on it. Another thing, if a thimble does not fit on your finger, do not push it on. I like to use these types of thimbles because they're adjustable to fit a variety of sized fingers. Next, we have pins. Pins are used to hold fabric together prior to sewing. So for example, if I were sewing a jacket and I needed to sew on a patch, I would take my pin, I would place my patch on top of the other fabric, I would push it through and pull it up, and then that fabric is now in place. When we're not using a pin, you want to make sure that you do not store it in your mouth. You can store it right inside of your pin cushion, so it's easily found later. Same rule as the needle, if you drop your pins, pick them up quickly. Don't wait for a later time to pick them up. And it's always great to store your pins inside of a pin cushion. Up next, we have a button. A button is a small disc sewn onto a garment, either to fasten it by being pushed through a slit made for its purpose, or for decoration. When not using a button, we want to make sure that we do not hold them in our mouth, as you can possibly swallow or choke on them. The last thing I would like to go over today is a tape measure. A tape measure is a flexible ruler. When we use our tape measure, we want to make sure that when they're not in use, you do not hang them around your neck. I like this type of tape measure because it's retractable, and when I'm not using it, I'm easily just able to push that button and it goes away, and I can store it to the side for when I need it. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you learned a couple of things. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comments section. I hope you all have a great day. Bye.